your goal was to be in the senior company because that's where all the good parts were. We were encouraged to take as many classes as possible. Rest was really not a thing. There was no spring break from the studio. There was no winter break. It was just dance, dance, dance all the time with very little conditioning. So I started developing patellar tendonitis in my left knee. I needed to take a full month off of dance. And I was like, a month? So I'm really sorry to those two men who I kicked in the balls during shoulder sits. That was one of many reasons I didn't like partnering. One of the top ways that the artistic director at the ballet school I grew up in exerted control over us was within the level system in the school. I don't think I talked about this too much in my previous video about the school, which I highly recommend watching if you want to get more context on the toxic nature of the school I grew up at. So I will link that above and in the description and at the end of this video if you want to go check that out. In that video, I called the artistic director Mirta, one of the characters from the ballet Giselle, so I will continue with that here. So at this school, when I first started at it, we had 6 levels, but I believe it was around when I was in level 2, it expanded to 8. And when I first started at the school, my mom called to sign me up and they asked about my previous ballet experience. I had a tiny little bit through a tap ballet jazz combo class I'd been taking at my school. So I thought I was pretty experienced. I was like, I know the positions, I know what I'm doing. So I was kind of shocked when they put me in level 1 and a little offended because I was like, I know the positions, why am I in level 1? Well, I soon found out when I got there that I knew absolutely nothing about ballet. Except the positions. That was pretty much it. Knew nothing about the technique. I won't say way in over my head because it's level 1, it's designed to teach you everything, but it was very clear that I needed to be in level 1. And I was in level 1 for quite a while. So I started in level 1 and I was in that level for about, I think a year and 8 months, but after about 6 months in the level, back when I was there, they had like a level 1.5. So there weren't any like special classes for level 1.5, but you got to wear a colored elastic. And let me get into the elastics because those were really like a status symbol of the school and one of the tools that was used, in my opinion, to exert control over us. Each level had a color. So level 1, the elastic was white. I think that was the case up until the school closed recently. I think level 1 was always white. It's the kind of the easiest, cheapest kind of elastic to get. So it was literally just like a thin white elastic, maybe 1/4 of an inch, that you would wear around your waist. So not your hips, but specifically your waist, the part of your body that is the narrowest. We were told that over and over, not your hips, it must go on your waist. These elastics around our waist, they were supposed to be a hip alignment belt that you would use to look in the mirror and see if your hips were aligned. Maybe I was just a bad student, but I don't know that I ever used mine to check my hip alignment. I mean, I probably did like once, but for me, it was always just, part of our uniform and something we wore to show what level we were in. And actually, to illustrate how much those colored elastics meant to me, I spent so much time yesterday looking to see if I could find them because I thought I still had them, but I can't find them. Oh, and I keep telling myself, it's so silly. It's just a piece of colored elastic. But I worked so hard for those pieces of colored elastic, and I may actually still have them somewhere, but I've looked everywhere I can think of, and I can't find them. So how Mirta exerted control over us with the levels was it was very strict. Like you could not just be like, oh, I want to go take another levels class. You could take lower level classes. In fact, that was encouraged to help you work on your basics and keep that up, and also just be a good example for the younger students in the class. In every level 1 class, they always like to have some people from higher levels taking that class so that they could show the younger dancers what to do, stand at the end of the bar, be the lead partner in going across the floor together. But you absolutely could not take a higher level class without permission. And Mirta was the one who, by herself, decided when you could move up to a new level, and if she said no, that was it. There's nothing you could do. And everyone knew what level you were because of that colored elastic hip alignment belt around your waist, and getting to wear a new color was like the most exciting thing in the world. So level 1 was white. But when I was in level 1, as I mentioned, they had this level 1.5. And basically what it meant was you were allowed to stand at the end of the bar, which was a privilege because it meant that other people could follow you during the steps. And then when we went across the floor in the center, you could be like the more advanced dancer in the group. So it was even kind of like a status symbol within level 1 itself. So that was a pink elastic, which actually later became the color for level 4. So it's a little confusing looking back at my pictures now, but I'll throw one of those up on the screen so you can see what the level 1.5 elastic looks like. So I was very proud to have that. So I had it from about 6 months into that level, all the way until I made it to level 2, finally like another year and 2 months later. And I don't know how long this level 1.5 thing was around, because I don't think it was around a whole lot longer, like after I graduated from level 1. So then I graduated from level 1 into level 2, and up until the day I moved up to level 2, it was this beautiful light blue color elastic. But the day I moved up, they were like, oh, we're all out of the light blue, so we need to switch the color. They switched to yellow. Yellow is like my least favorite color, so I was not too thrilled about that. But I was still just so happy to be moving up to level 2 that I didn't really care all that much. Each level had class requirements for how many classes a week you had to take. Level 1 was just 1 to 2 classes a week. You had to get at least 1 class a week, so that's what I did. Every Saturday morning, did my level 1 class. And then my mom and I were shocked when I got to level 2 that now I had to do 3 classes a week. And these class requirements were extremely strict. If you did not meet them, you would be demoted. Probably just temporarily, but I was never going to find out. So we made sure to meet that class requirement. So once I got to level 2, I went from going on just Saturday mornings for my 1 class a week to, I think it was Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So quite the significant increase from what I'd been doing for my first year and 8 months or so in ballet. Level 2, I think I was in it for, I think only a year. So now we'll talk about how you would get promoted from level to level. So the most common way was if you did the summer ballet camp. Sometimes you'd only be in a level for a year, but we were told always expect to be in one for 2 years. So typically if you completed the summer camp and you'd had a year or so of experience, then you might get to move up to the next level after that. And typically, basically then you would do both ballet camps for the levels back to back. So I didn't get moved up to level 2 that way. It was actually right after that. So I don't think I did ballet 2 camp that year. Yeah, I think if anything, I did ballet 1 camp. And then it was like start of the next school year. So probably like a month or so later that I got moved up to level 2. But then moving up from level 2 to 3, I did the ballet 2 camp the next summer and then got moved up to level 3. Getting to move to a new level was considered a huge deal. It meant that you took different classes, you had different opportunities for new roles in the shows. So everyone's goal was always, I want to move up to the next level. So in that respect, it did help keep us very motivated because there was always that goal. And if you were a new student to the studio, you would be evaluated by the artistic director, or in my case, like since I had pretty much no experience, they could just talk on the phone and be like, yeah, she's level 1. But if you had a bit more experience, then you would come in, take a class, get evaluated, and then placed in a level. So this brings me to one of the ways that Mirta, in my opinion, liked to use the level system to exert control over the dancers. A couple examples come to mind of 2 dancers who came to our studio from another one. They'd clearly been dancing for a long time, had a lot of experience. She placed them in levels that I would consider to be below their skill level. So I think that she used the level placements, especially when people were new to our studio, as a way to say, look, I control you. I get to determine which level you're in. I imagine she made people feel bad about themselves, putting them in a level that was probably lower than what they felt they should be in. And I would agree with them, especially the 2 dancers I'm thinking of. And if you asked her about it, I'm sure she would say like, oh, well, they need to fix this element of their technique before they're ready for the next level. I'm like, yeah, probably true, but they probably also could have done that and been in the next level while they did that. So these 2 dancers in particular, they were placed in my level both times. And I remember looking at them thinking, wow, they're really good. Like, why are they at my level? They should probably be a bit higher. And both of those dancers did move up fairly quickly, but it just always felt like a power play to me that she put them in those lower levels before she allowed them to move up to the level that they probably should have been in to begin with. So going back to the colors for each level. So I'll go through what the colors were, at least by the time I left. Some of them, like the blue to yellow, changed for level 2, and then that level 1.5, like just kind of went away. So level 1 was white, level 2 was yellow, level 3 when I was in level 3, it was this really pretty, like, mint green, but it eventually became more of a lime green, which I didn't really like that color, so I'm glad I never had to wear that one. Level 4 was pink. At first, it was a lighter pink, but then it became kind of a darker pink. It actually became exactly the color I was wearing for level 1.5. Level 5 was red, loved that color. Did not love that level though, I'll get into that. Level 6 was light pink, and level 7 was like a light-ish purple. Level 8 didn't have a elastic. You were at that stage were basically considered graduated. That was basically the level for people who were about to go professional or like should have, but were still at the company like many years later, either because they just chose to stay on and do something else for their job or couldn't make it into a company. I don't know. But basically level 8 usually had like 2 or 3 people in it. There weren't any special level 8 classes. It just meant you were one of the top dancers at the studio, probably getting the lead roles, and just were kind of treated more like an adult than a student. So with these colored elastics, you had to wear the one that was provided. There was a time I remember where some of the dancers in level 4 were buying like these nice, they kind of look like ribbon. They probably still exist today, but I don't see people wearing hip alignment belts as often now. But they were thicker, super pretty. They had like a clasp in the back. And she told them, no, you can't wear those. You have to wear the one that's provided. Why? I have no idea, other than like either wanting everyone to just be super uniform, which could be a level of control. But in my opinion, it was just because she wanted to tell us what to do, what to wear. I actually haven't touched on leotards. She had pretty strict requirements for leotards too. We had to wear a black leotard, pink tights for all levels, all the way through the school. You could not wear a halter style leotard because she said that would pull your neck forward, which there probably is some truth in that. So still to this day, I don't wear halter leotards because of that. But also I just don't find them comfortable. So for both reasons, I do not wear a halter leotard. And your black leotard had to be a solid black. It could not have any other color on it, like no trim that's another color. There was one leotard that came out while I was there that had kind of like this shimmery gold on it. It was I think it was an ABT leotard. That one seemed to be okay. My mom wouldn't let me buy it because we were nervous that she wouldn't allow it, but another dancer at my studio did have it. She was typically one of the favorites, so I wonder if that's how she got away with it, because it was like just borderline. But it was very pretty, so I'm glad she got to wear it because I at least got to look at it, even if I couldn't wear it myself. The only time you were allowed to wear a colored leotard, and even that had to be a solid color, so it could not be multicolor, have a pattern or anything, or it could be black with a little bit of color somewhere, like that counted as a colored leotard, was in the higher levels. If you took like an insane amount of classes per week, the specific number varied per level, but I think when I was in level 6, it was 9 classes a week. You could wear a colored leotard, again, solid color, still rules on that, on the Saturday. So typically on Saturday, you would have class in the morning and then rehearsals all afternoon. So you got rewarded for taking a crazy amount of classes by getting to wear a colored leotard. So let's go back to my progression through the levels. I never made it all the way to level 7 because I left while I was in level 6, but I'll go through how I got to each level before that. So level 3, as I mentioned, I'd moved up to that in the summer ballet camp, but 2 months later after that, I actually got moved up to level 4, which was a total shock. Did not see that coming whatsoever. And just one day in class, she said to me, Susie, or Susanna, that's my full name, you can be level 4. And I was like, what? It was probably one of the highlights of my ballet experience, because usually every level you're just waiting to get to the next one and feeling like it's taking forever. But that one, I was in level 3 for 2 months. And level 4 was a pretty big deal level. It was a very foundational level. That was the level where you got to turn for the first time, pirouettes. Prior to that, we were not allowed to turn. And this goes back to one of the technical elements of our training that I don't feel was done very well, was we were not allowed to turn except chaîné turns, which were also not taught well. I'll probably come back to that in like another video because I kind of need to show it for it to make sense, but we were not allowed to do pirouettes to level 4. Like no turning, you were not allowed to turn. We had that fear put in us, like turning is scary, you're not allowed to do it until you are allowed. And so I remember my first class, it might have even been that very class where I got moved up, where suddenly I was like, oh my God, I'm allowed to turn now. So all of us, when we got to level 4 and were finally allowed to turn after years of being told you can't turn, we were terrified. So I'm still scared of pirouettes to this day. I think this was a pretty common theme for all of us, that we were all scared to turn, at least those of us who came up through the levels and didn't transfer from another studio where they'd already learned to turn, as we were all terrified of turns. So it was so scary trying a pirouette for the first time. And I feel like for all of us, that carried through for the rest of our time dancing there. And for those of us who are still dancing today, including me, I'm still scared to turn because of the way we were taught. The rationale behind the way we were taught to turn was that you want to have your technique pristine and crisp before you learn how to turn, because it's really hard to fix that later. But the downside of that is that we didn't get used to learning how to spin while we were young and not afraid of it. So by the time you got to level 4, you were probably around 10, 11, 12. So you're kind of starting to get to the age where you're scared to try new things. I think that's one reason why dancers and gymnasts are encouraged to start so young. One, because there's just so much training that has to go into it, but you're less scared of things at that point, like flipping and turning. So because we weren't allowed to turn to level 4, we were all just terrified. And none of us who grew up in that system really ever became good turners. I'd say we were all very clean turners. We could all do a very nice single or double, maybe triple. But the people who I think of at our studio who really excelled at turning didn't learn how to turn at that studio. Another reason that level 4 was such an important level was that was the level where you got point shoes. And it didn't happen right away, so there were kind of two parts of level 4. Those who had just moved up and were either not old enough to go on point yet, our minimum age was 11. You had to be 11 years old or like just about to turn 11. So once you've just moved up, you hadn't been given the green light yet. And back then, at least, we did not have any kind of pre-point training. I think level 4 was around when we started Pilates, so I was probably doing that once a week, but I don't remember receiving any kind of education on how to strengthen my feet and ankles and legs. It was all just ballet class and then maybe that one Pilates class a week. So I was almost certainly not actually ready for point. When I finally got okay, you can join the next point class, go to this specific shop and see this specific fitter and get some shoes. I was probably not ready at all, especially with my feet. I have very hypermobile feet, so they need even more strength than the average person. So I probably should not have been put on point when I was. We should have absolutely had a pre-point class. I don't know why we didn't. I don't know if that was common back then, that just the knowledge wasn't there on what you needed. But it was all down to Mirta's discretion. When she decided you were ready for point, she told you were ready, told you where to go to get your shoes, who to get fitted by, which that lady was terrifying, by the way. She kind of seemed like a witch, and she also was not very good at fitting. So if she was the best, like I'm kind of scared of what the other fitters were like. She put me in some shoes that were just horrible. I was in shoes that were too narrow my entire time at this school. I never found a pair that I truly liked. So I was 12 when I got told that I could go on point, and of course it was like the best thing that had ever happened to me. I was so excited. I had wanted this for so long. I was thrilled that it was finally happening. So I had my first point shoe fitting, got some Sanches, which I barely see used these days. I don't think they weren't super popular back then. They're not the prettiest shoe, but Mirta really liked them as a beginner shoe. So that's what most of us were told to get if we could. So that is what I got for my first pair of shoes. So then in March 2003, when I was 12, I had my first point class. And we, of course, had very strict rules about when and where you could wear your point shoes. I don't remember exactly what the rules were, but at first it was something like after 3 months of doing point, you could wear them at home, but just to walk around, you were not allowed to go on point. Just putting them on your feet to kind of get used to being them. Then I think it was after 6 months, we were allowed to take one of our specific classes per week. I think it was like our Tuesday class. We could take bar on point. And then after a year was when you were allowed to perform on point. If you were cast in a role that was a point role. So my first performance on point was Cinderella in 2004. I was one of the horses. Actually, I have a picture of us right here. Yep, that's me right there. That was me and my 3 closest friends at the studio. I think for all of us that was, no, my friend Rose was on point before she came to our studio. So that probably wasn't her first pointe performance, but for the other three of us, I think it was. So I was 13 at that point, and I had been on pointe for a year and 3 months. So yeah, when we were rehearsing, it had probably been about exactly a year. So after level 4, which I think I was in for the full 2 years, because learning how to turn and then getting on pointe, there's a lot of material in that level. And level 4, I don't remember the class requirement per week. It was probably 4 or 5 classes a week, more likely 5, or like 4 and a Pilates class or something like that. So then getting up to level 5. So after my 2 or so years in level 4, I got moved up to level 5. I think that was another one where I got moved up after the summer camp. Not entirely sure, but yeah, it definitely wasn't another like just randomly in class, like you get to move up today. But I was in level 5 for a long time, and that was a really hard level for me because after, I don't know how long it was probably about a year, Mirta, one day in one of our classes, randomly just started moving up people to level 6, kind of the same way I had gotten moved up from level 3 to 4. So this day in our level 5 class, she just suddenly started naming off people, you're a level 6 now. And I was like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. Like, she just moved up a bunch of my friends, it's gonna be me too. So I was, working really hard that class. And then she stopped naming people, and I wasn't one of them. So for you to understand what a big deal this was to me, I need to explain the difference between level 5 and level 6. So in our performing company, we had a junior company and a senior company. Junior company was levels 1 through 5, and senior company was levels 6 through 8. So now, not only was I in a different level than my friends, being stuck at level 5 while they got moved up to level 6, but they were in the senior company, and I was still in the junior company. And I was 14 at this point, so when you're 14 and starting high school and being lumped in with, the people who were just starting ballet in the junior company, that already didn't feel good. And then on top of that, I now wasn't with my friends. Level 5 and level 6 also didn't have any classes together. We might have had Pilates together, and we might have had like one class a week together, but I went from taking class with my friends every day to now not seeing them at all. And also just the personal, feeling like a failure, because of course everyone's goal was to move up to the next level, and that's what we wanted. So then to see my friends all get moved up and me left behind, it felt horrible. I felt so bad about myself. I went home that night and I hysterically cried, like the most I had ever cried in my life. And my dad totally did not understand what a big deal this was to me and how crushing it was. And he was like, why are you crying so much? No one died. But inside it felt like, my dreams had died, even though obviously I could still get to level 6 eventually. But in that moment, it was like the worst thing that had ever happened to me. So I was just hysterical. So I eventually talked to Mirta and asked her, well, what do I need to do to move up to level 5? And she could definitely tell that I was not happy about this at all. I mean, who would be? I just got separated from all my friends, got made to feel like I was not a good dancer, or at the very least, not as good as them. So it just hurt in all respects. So she told me that I have slightly knock knees, which I didn't even know what that was at that point. I still don't even know if that's true. I think I do, but I also don't know if that's just because I've internalized it from her. So she wanted me to go see a chiropractor that she sent a lot of dancers to. She was not contracted with insurance, so we had to pay out of pocket. And she wanted me to work with this chiropractor to work on my knees and help my turn out more. So I worked with her for months. I thought that this would be a relatively quick thing, that, maybe a month or two, and then I get moved up to level 6 with my friends and all would be fine. It took about 9 months for me to get moved up. And now, as a 35-year-old, 9 months isn't that long, but when you're 15, 9 months is an absolute eternity. It was like almost the entire school year. So I wasn't cast in parts with my friends because they're in the senior company, I'm in the junior company, so we're eligible for different parts. I wasn't taking class with my friends. That year was just absolutely miserable. That year for Nutcracker, I actually did get a really good part. I was the angel in Act 2, so that was my, I think, one and only solo for Nutcracker. It definitely wasn't like a lead role or anything, but, I did get a little solo in there. But I often forget about this part just because of how miserable I was during that time. So I do wonder if she gave me that, because I'm almost positive she did all the casting herself to like try and do something nice for me. But knowing her, I don't really think that was the case. I'd be shocked if she was trying to do something nice for me. But it was like a nice little thing to have during that time. But yeah, I was miserable during that whole school year until I finally got moved up. I think it was like May or so. We did a festival called Regional Dance America every year. That was typically in the spring. And it was right after that that I got moved up, because there was a judge that would come to the senior company class before the festival. It was called adjudication, and the senior company would also perform some pieces, and then the adjudicator would pick which piece was going to be submitted into the festival. So I don't know if there were usually a couple pieces that were prepared for that, and then the adjudicator would pick between those two. So I don't think my friends got to perform in the one that year, but there's a good chance they were in the other piece that didn't get picked. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, I was not performing in any of those pieces. I did not get to be in the adjudicated class, and then it was after that that I finally got moved up to level 6. Now, as I mentioned in my other video about the school, which you should totally check out if you're enjoying this one, I will link it again here, is that typically as you moved up the levels, the worse it got within the school and how you were treated. And that was so true. Senior company was just miserable, which was really disappointing because our entire time at the school, which, gosh, I don't even know how many years it would have been at that point, at least 5 years, probably 6 at that point, your goal was to be in the senior company because that's where all the good parts were. Also in the senior company, there was even more of a class requirement. So for the first time, I started getting overuse injuries, which hadn't really happened to me before. And also just getting older, I was close to 16 at this point. So all those years of pounding on my body were starting to take a toll. And also our downstairs floor was not sprung, or if it was like barely sprung. Mirta always said she wanted the floor there to be hard so that we would get used to it, or so we would get used to it for the stage, which was also super hard. But the thing about a stage is you're not dancing on the stage every day. You're dancing on the stage a few days a year, maybe. But this floor, we're dancing on this floor every day. So I started developing patellar tendonitis in my left knee. So went to the chiropractor, who also she was kind of like a physical therapist too. I know the laws in each state are different. This was California, so whatever the laws were there, she was also able to help me kind of rehab injuries. So I would go to her and get exercises to try and get rid of this tendonitis, which just stuck around forever. Because of course, during this whole time, I wasn't resting from dance at all whatsoever. Rest was not something we were encouraged to do. We were encouraged to take as many classes as possible. And yeah, even after shows, I think we got like 2 days off or so. I don't remember getting a whole lot of time off in the summer. So I'm not really sure how or when my family and I took vacations, because we occasionally did. But yeah, rest was really not a thing. There was no spring break from the studio. There was no winter break. It was just dance, dance, dance all the time, with very little conditioning. We were required, I think, at level 6 to take 2 Pilates classes per week. So that was all I was doing outside of ballet, was those 2 Pilates classes. And then any physical therapy type exercises from that chiropractor. So finally, the next summer, I was told that I was told, I think by the chiropractor, that I needed to take a full month off of dance. And I was like, a month? Which now I'm like, I take a month off all the time because, well, one, I'm injured all the time, but a month flies by like that. But a whole month off ballet, like I couldn't even imagine such a thing. I'd barely taken like a week or 2 off. So I took that month off that summer. My knee started to feel better then. But that patellar tendonitis I struggled with into college, like in my early 20s. I think I finally got it under control around then, doing more physical therapy. But yeah, that hard floor was not friendly to any of us. It wasn't too long after I left that studio, probably like maybe a year or 2, they did replace the floor and got a like raised up higher one that was sprung. So I hope that the overuse injuries for dancers after me reduced, but I don't know for sure. My goal for as long as I was at the school was to make it to the top level. Not necessarily level 8, because that was kind of like, it wasn't really a level. It was more like, you've graduated. But I really wanted to make it to level 7. Unfortunately, that never happened because midway through level 6, I was like, I'm done. If you want to learn more about that story, that's in my other video too. But even up until just a few years ago, I was still having dreams that I'd moved up to level 7. I was like, oh, I did it, I achieved my goal. Because that's how much it mattered to us to move up to the next level. We had it drilled into us that like moving up the levels was this huge deal, just because there was that level of control over it. Like we had no control over what level we were in. Mirta had full control over that. You had the colored elastic on you, so everyone knew what level you were in. So the whole system was designed to make moving up a level like such a big deal that everyone wanted it so much, and everyone was going to work so hard to get there and just do everything they could to please Mirta so that we could get that promotion to the next level. I'm sure other pre-professional schools are pretty similar in having strict levels and of course, being evaluated to see what level you'd fit best in if you're coming to that school from another one or if you're just starting out. But I don't know how they determine how to move people up, whether it was just kind of like the couple of experiences I had in class getting moved up myself or seeing other people get moved up, or if it was more like, you do this level for a year and then everyone moves up to the next level the next year. So I'm not sure if that's how it worked, but it always felt like such an element of control to me. I knew I was never going to make it to level 7. I always struggled on pointe, which I now know is just because I didn't have the strength and poorly fitting shoes. So I'm actually kind of amazed I did as much as I was able to do back then. But yeah, once I got on pointe, I feel like my progress kind of stalled. And yeah, so in level 6, I just wasn't progressing a whole lot. I was also terrified of partnering, which we had to do then. I'm not a very coordinated person, so having to dance super close to someone, especially turning too, like going back to fear of turning, oh my gosh, now there's the fear that I'm gonna whack someone in the balls with my knee. I did kick 2 of the guys in the balls on a shoulder sit. Yeah, not my proudest moments. I don't even really know how it happened, because when you do a shoulder sit, if you're not familiar, at least this style of shoulder sit that we were doing was you'll do a sous-sus, as in go up and releve right in front of them, like usually arms up, and then they'll lift you up, so then your legs are dangling down while they're lifting you up. And I imagine what probably happened is my legs probably swung back just ever so slightly, which I didn't feel, but then they would crumple to the ground, and that is how I knew. So I'm really sorry to those 2 men who I kicked in the balls during shoulder sits. Yeah, that was one of many reasons I didn't like partnering, because I'm just not coordinated, and dancing that close to another person is scary. So between partnering, struggling on pointe, not getting the roles I wanted, feeling like I wasn't progressing, I'd had enough. So more on that in my other video. I absolutely understand why ballet schools have levels, and I also understand why it's important to not get moved up to a level before you're ready for it. So all of that made perfect sense. But just with the colored elastics and the sometimes very public ways that she would move people up, it just created this, it was just one more way that she created this environment of control and fear, and that you would do anything she said to please her so that you could get moved up to that next level. Because if she said no, you weren't moving up, and that was that. So that was the level system at the school I grew up at. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe and check out some of my other videos. Thank you for watching.